Do you want a recipe for creating a great homeschool class? Well, I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all over the world about parenting and good communication, but also homeschool because I've homeschooled all of my children. And in this video, we're talking about how to put together a great homeschool class. In this video, I'm going to share a little bit of my experience with building homeschool classes and what I've seen works and doesn't work. And then I'm going to share with you some key things that you can do to make sure you create a great learning environment for your homeschool class. I've created homeschool classes for my children as well as for other people's children. I've been part of commonwealths and co-ops and different groups where we've tried to get together to collaborate ideas and create projects and fun activities for our children. But you know, no matter whether I was creating a homeschool class for my family or whether I was creating a homeschool class for anybody else's family, I always kept some key things in mind. I will be forever grateful for the training that I received years ago from some friends of mine at LEMI, the Leadership Education Mentoring Institute. The LEMI Institute gave some great instruction on how to put together classes, on how youth learned, and what key components that you wanted to put together. They based their model on the Thomas Jefferson education model. Now, I was loving the Thomas Jefferson education model. I wanted my children to do some things with other people, and so I thought I'll start teaching some classes, and I went to these trainings for the LEMI program, and I was blown away. I learned so much. I will forever be grateful. Shout out to all the people that I've worked with in there. And by the way, LEMI still does training on classes. So this video is in no way going to be able to give you absolutely everything that LEMI could give you. In fact, some of the things I'm going to be sharing were things that they didn't talk about in their trainings, but there is so much value in those trainings. I highly recommend it. Because of LEMI, I taught Shakespeare classes. I taught classes about constitutional studies. I taught adults how to get their own education by doing 5-pillar tutorial programs. I got a lot of my own great education because of my involvement in that program as well. And I definitely used all of the bits that I learned doing the programs that they put together for their classes that they offer and teach people how to teach. And I took those components and principles and made other classes, history classes, debate clubs, all kinds of things because of the things that I learned from LEMI, as well as the other things that I knew about education. So let's talk about what some of those things are. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, if you've subscribed, you've probably noticed that every once in a while I bring up homeschool classes. And I tell people some of the things about homeschool, and that's because there are so many people that are homeschooling now. It's really popular and you don't have to be alone doing it. There are so many different offerings out there. But if there's one thing I'll forever be grateful for, it's that I know how to create my own curriculum. I know how to create my own class because I know the principles that make a good learning environment. Be sure to look at some of my other homeschool videos on the channel so that you can get more information about how I homeschool and some of the principles of homeschooling and education in general that I have on the channel, because there's no way I'm going to be able to touch on all of that here. I even have other things, like I have a whole website that's called theheartofhomeschool.net where I do free trainings on there about how I homeschool. So anyway, be sure to check out more things. But let's get into some of these nuts and bolts about what makes a great class. So you always want to begin with the end in mind. So you want to know what your end project is going to be. If you are going to be teaching anything, let's say that you're going to be teaching about Shakespeare, what's your end project? Well, in my case, it was always going to be a Shakespeare play. We're going to actually do one. We're going to put it on. We're going to be thespians and act out all of the parts. That was going to be the fun thing. If I am going to have a class where I'm just talking about the basics of writing and stuff like that, then what's my end project going to be? Well, maybe it's going to be a research paper about something that the child cares about. And they're going to spend the whole semester getting ready for that type of a paper. You know, every class you take in college, they all have what? An end project, a final project or final exam of some sort. I don't like exams as much for children in homeschool. I think a better exam of how much you understand Shakespeare is to actually just do a Shakespeare play, you know, or do at least some scenes from a Shakespeare play or something like that. It's a lot more fun than just taking a test about Shakespeare. So, but tests can be final projects, and, you know, in the academic world, they've definitely been used like that time and time again. So what is your project? Is it going to be something hands-on? Is it going to be something that's handwritten? Is it going to be a big book that you read? You know, for some of my children, I would say to them, okay, well, let's come up with your main project for the semester. Outside of projects that you're doing for other classes that you're part of, what do you want your project to be? Well, Mom, I want to read this whole series, or I want to read this one big, huge book in the Durant series, or I want to read Understanding the Times, and then I want to read like these other books like The Alchemist and stuff, and I want to compare those things to Understanding the Times and see what the world views are in there and stuff. Okay, that's a great project. I'm going to come up with a chart, Mom. Okay, sounds like a great project. So now we've got a project. We're going to have an end goal for the project, like a date. You've got to have a date that you quantify it. If you create a project for a homeschool class and you don't put a date at the end, it's not going to happen. That's just period, because homeschool days, they just all run together because you're just at home. You're just, you know. So you have to have a date. It has to be like on a calendar. There might need to be a sign about it, you know, to remind everybody this is the date. And if you're putting together a class for other people, you're going to remind them of this on a regular basis. Hey, this is coming, and we're going to work toward this. We're going to baby step toward this big project that we're putting together. A really great learning environment involves stretching, okay? So we want to stretch the learning, stretch the skills. If they don't have to stretch, if it is too easy, your class is okay? Just like when you go to church, if you're a church-going person, you go to church and they start telling you all the things you already know about the gospel, then you're like, okay, and you get this Gerber gospel experience where you're like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's easy to swallow, but I didn't get anything out of it, right? So no, don't just give them the milk, okay? Give them the meat. It's important that they get a chance to have some meat. Not enough that it's super overwhelming and they quit, but enough that they feel like, wow, I did something. So stretch them. Write a type of paper they've never written before. Have them memorize something longer than they've ever memorized before. Make sure it's something that they can say, I did that. That's what makes an awesome homeschool experience. And as homeschoolers, you can do that better than anybody else, because at school they have to go down the assembly line and that's all they can do is stick to that. They hardly ever get a stretch out of it. But in your environment, they could study anything. They could be doing college curriculum when they're 8 years old. They could do it if that was something they were ready for and you wanted to do at that time. They have to want it to do it, so that means you need to engage in goal setting, okay? Encourage them to see that their choices are really what leads them to their successes. It's not you. You're setting up the environment, but they are choosing to succeed in it. So have a goal setting time. With your children, set goals all the time. In my Teaching Self-Government Parenting program, we have something called mentor meetings, and we have those every single week. This is the mentoring journal. It has a spot for calendaring, that the child can set their calendar for things that they want to do, has a spot to fill out all of their goals. This is going to be something that we are going to regularly refer to as a family. So this is every single week, Sunday night. Each child gets their own individual mentor meetings, and they love it. So this is just one key component to the Teaching Self-Government Parenting program, and you can find these mentoring books on my website, teachingselfgovernment.com. That's the cheapest place to get them, just so that you know. So anyway, and then it's a record that the child has for all of their learning, everything that they're doing in your family. So you're going to use the same philosophy if you're teaching a class with other people. Make sure that you have an opportunity to talk with each of them about their goals. Have them come up with a goal, and you'll take a few minutes. It may not be as long as working with your own child, but at the beginning of a semester, have them come up with a goal, tell you what it is, and you make a note of it. And then check up with them a couple of times throughout the semester to make sure that they're not needing any help progressing toward that goal. You might even talk to their parents also about the goal that they are setting. Social time is so important. Why are we even going to get together as a group to do any type of homeschooling if we don't think of the social as an important part of the environment? It is. So it didn't matter what we were going to be studying the day. We would come up with fun games that we would start the day out with, just to get everybody to open up, or maybe a game that would happen midway through to get everybody a chance to stretch and do something, to have some time to laugh and talk and bond together. Give everyone an opportunity to have a few minutes for social time. You need to have a reporting system. So how are they going to report to you? Is there going to be a chart that they fill out and you just periodically take a look at it? Is it going to be like a classroom thing that's just passed around? They mark the boxes of things that they're doing, or are they going to report to you in a mentor fashion where you have a little meeting with them every so often? Or are there going to be deadlines for things? I think it's okay to have deadlines. For some children, it's very inspiring to have a deadline. They will do things for a deadline more than they would do without one, which brings me to your own house. So in your own house, if you have a child who's not getting things done very much, they're not finishing things, have a deadline and a final project. Okay, so we are going to read The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom. Well, on this day, we're going to be done with it. We're going to invite our friends over. We're going to have a discussion about The Hiding Place for 1 hour, and then we're going to watch The Hiding Place, and we're going to have a pizza party on this day. Okay, there's a project, and there's something that they can get excited about, and it has a deadline attached to it. Make sure that you give them lots of fodder for inspiration, which means you're doing inspiring things that relate to the topic that you're teaching. You're studying stuff, coming up with things that nobody has thought of before, so that you're excited about it. Give them more information and more inspiration. So try to be asking yourself the question, am I inspired by this? And if not, find your own inspiration, because that is going to lead to the richest environment for that homeschool. Now, there can be a lot said about formats. You've got to decide what your format is going to be for this class. Younger children thrive on a format that goes like this. So, and when I say younger children, I'm talking about, up until about age 12, maybe from like 6 to 12, okay? There's this format where you get together, and then you have a little bit of unstructured social time. Maybe they play in a yard or something like that. And then everybody's gathered together and you have a formal time where you maybe, you might say the Pledge of Allegiance, you might say a mission statement for your class or your group. You're going to have a lesson of some sort where everyone's going to listen to that lesson. But then boom, break for a project related to the lesson. Then come back to either another lesson and then another project, or, maybe now the children are going to lead out and they are going to do some of their own projects and be the leaders of the other people doing the projects as well. Go on field trips. Those types of things are going to be very effective format-wise for younger children ages 6 to 12. When the children are older, they hit about ages 10, 11, 12 for sure, and up, then the format needs to change. Now we need to get more academically rigorous, and we have hopefully a longer attention span. So with a longer attention span, they should be able to put in a little bit more seat time. So they arrive, they're talking with each other while they're waiting for class to start. Then what we do is we talk about what they studied in preparation for the class first. This makes sure that they know that that study time that they put in is super important, because there's always going to be enough time for it. So if they read a book, you do that book discussion first. Plus it gets them talking, which is really great. Then you're going to build upon that book discussion. So then you would say, after the book discussion, now we're going to have a time where we write our ahas, the things that we want to always remember about this book, and that's going to now be fodder for our paper, which is going to arrive next week. And by the way, the next week when you meet together, because they wrote the paper, what are you going to do first? You're going to all review papers. Everybody is going to take turns reading each other's papers and giving feedback on papers, and you're going to have a papers discussion about the things that you brought out in your papers. And so then that's going to lead, into the next thing. Now, after that, you might have that little break time where there's the social time where they go and do something fun. And then following that, that's when you're going to bring in some new information. Maybe it's skills training. You're going to talk about something in the writing or something like that. And then there might be also something that you bring in on certain weeks when maybe they have a recitation that they're bringing to class, or maybe they have a project that they need to share. So at the end of the semester, be sure to share the projects. That's important. If they have recitations or things that they've memorized, make sure that you have a certain time set aside for those things as well during the semester. semester and make sure they're a top priority. Anything that they memorize or put together, top priority. Then comes a little bit of social, then the lesson, and then we move on to it. What are the assignments for next time? And usually by then it's done. I like a 2-hour block. 2-hour blocks is kind of perfect. Could be an hour and a half for the younger potentially, but for sure 2 hours for the older seems to work really well. Now, like I mentioned before, I am just scratching the surface here. You see that I could talk about homeschool for, well, ever, because that's how I spent a huge chunk of my life, was running groups like this and making sure that our family was having a rich homeschool experience. So go to theheartofhomeschool.net and click on all of the trainings that are there for free. Get more help, see if you can learn more about the principles of homeschool that will make it successful for you. I'll see you there.